Hey y'all, welcome to Oh My Word with Katie. Before we get to the rest of today's episode, I want to talk about Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. I just finished reading this book and loved it. It was released in 1817, and as you might imagine with Jane Austen, it includes a lot of superb social satire, per usual, but also some satire of Gothic fiction of the time, which Gothic meaning a lot of supernatural elements, a lot of terror, a lot of secrets and mystery and high drama, things like that. This book came out decades before Jane Eyre or Wuthering Heights, but it's satirizing that same sort of genre in the second half of the book. So our heroine is 18-year-old Catherine Morland, who is staying for several weeks in the resort town of Bath, England, with some family friends when she meets a young man named Henry Tilney, who's the love interest of the novel. And Henry's sister invites Catherine to come stay with them at Northanger Abbey, their home. And Northanger Abbey is literally a former abbey where nuns lived. It has some storied history. And Catherine, because she's read a lot of these Gothic romances, is very excited to get to go stay there. So Catherine's a pretty hilarious character because on the one hand, she's 18, she doesn't seem to have a lot of experience out in the world. And on the other hand, she's very impressionable with these Gothic novels. So basically, she either thinks people are totally good or totally bad. And if she thinks you're good, she's going to think that until she is confronted with unavoidable evidence that you have lied to her face. And that's kind of what we see throughout the first half or the first 60% of the novel is just her total naivete about people. On the other hand, she gets to Northanger Abbey, and because she's been consuming these stories full of tunnels and secrets and hidden corpses and stuff, she ends up making a pretty bad assumption about one of the people living at Northanger Abbey. And so she goes from thinking that person is good to thinking that person is bad. It goes from black to white really fast. But by the end, she concludes, quote, "Among the English, she believed in their hearts and habits, there was a general, though unequal mixture of good and bad." In other words, this person at Northanger Abbey that she thought was a murderer is not a murderer, even though they might not be her favorite person in the world. And of course, it's a Jane Austen novel, so you know how it's going to end. But because it's Jane Austen, that's a good thing because she executes it so well. So, my favorite thing about this book, I have to say, is Jane Austen's razor sharp wit, as she absolutely skewers people who say one thing and mean another. Not that we ever do that in the South, right? I mean, we all know bless your heart is a euphemism for you stupid idiot. Um, but these characters in this novel take it a step further, or like 5 steps further. So, let me read you a line. A certain character says, "When once my affections are placed, it is not in the power of anything to change them." This character who says that later goes on to dump one fiance and pursue another when they find out that the first fiance isn't as rich as they thought. So their affections are absolutely changeable, even though they said the opposite. What's cool about this social satire is that Jane Austen was actually the daughter of an Anglican minister and a devout Christian herself. So while her novels don't follow the formula of today's Christian fiction, where the characters are like coming to know Jesus for the first time or something like that, they're absolutely Christian works because she is satirizing really these sins that we have of duplicitousness and greed and shallowness while still showing grace toward the characters. You know, she's not unkind, so there's a great balance there. And reading this book definitely made me want to make sure that I say what I mean and mean what I say. Or as Jesus said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. But anyway, highly recommend Northanger Abbey. I give it an A+. It's a quick read. And yeah, I think that's it for now. So I hope you'll enjoy the rest of today's episode. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Oh My Word with Katie, the show where we hear from Christian writers, give you amazing book recommendations, and marvel at all the ways God shows up in words and stories. I'm your host, Katie Ginn, and my guest today is Miss Jamie Ogle. I just read her new book, Daughter of the Rebellion, And Jamie is an award winning author of historical fiction full of danger, good rebels, and deep faith. She and her husband love to travel. They live in central Iowa and can usually be found gardening, beekeeping, homeschooling, and tromping through the woods with their 3 children. Jamie, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Katie. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Now I am really excited to talk about your new book. I just finished it 2 days ago. Perfect timing. It was amazing. So we will get into that. But just to let us get to know you a little bit better, were you a reader or a writer growing up? How'd you kind of get into writing?
Yeah, as soon as I could figure out how to read, I was reading everything I could get my hands on. And I kind of grew up surrounded by my grandparents who just came over and told stories all the time. So, and it was like stories of their lives and just amazing things they'd lived through that I was reading about in history books. And I was like, wow, this is like, you were actually there. This is amazing. So I
Mhm.
kind of fell in love with history, just kind of hearing their stories and perspective on what was going on in their lives while these big events were happening in the world. And then I also grew up, my parents read us missionary stories at bedtime. Those were our bedtime stories. So I just kind of grew up surrounded by story and just loved to read and loved these stories
Mhm.
of people standing up for their faith. And yeah,
Mhm. What kind of missionary stories were they reading you?
we read Bruce Porterfield's books.
Uh-huh.
Totally blanking on the titles now. But lots of missionary biographies. We read The Hiding Place. We read
Mhm.
I still have the whole series of all these missionary biographies, and
Yeah,
yeah.
very cool. So was there as you got older and were reading things on your own, was there a book or an author or a story that really captured you?
Um, I mean, my favorites growing up were Little House on the Prairie, all of
I was
them.
just thinking of those. Yeah.
Yep, those were my favorites. Those are my go-tos.
Mhm.
They're reading them aloud with my kids, and they're their favorites too. So that's
Aw.
kind of a fun thing to pass on. But
Yeah, I had the whole box set in like this blue box and this all the little
mhm.
blue paperbacks lined up in there. I loved it.
Yeah.
That's so much fun. So then what was your process like coming to be a Christian fiction author? Like, was this always what you wanted to do, or did you have another career, or how did that come to be?
Yeah. So I wanted to be a foreign missionary. I mean, big surprise coming from
Yeah.
my those bedtime stories, but I wanted that for my life. Like I wanted to share the gospel, I wanted, to travel, I wanted all these adventures. Um, and I loved it when the missionaries came to our church and shared
Mhm.
all the things about what God was doing in their countries and just all the different things. So I was like, oh man, I want to do that. Like I want to stand up front and tell all these stories about what God is doing. And as I grew, so I wanted to be a missionary. That was my goal. And then as I, got older, I realized I just wanted to be a missionary so I could tell the stories. Which I mean, I wanted to do the other things too, but like my real motivation was to be a missionary on furlough so I could come back and just, that was what I was imagining missionary work to be, was, the part of the missionary work that I actually saw.
Mhm.
And I kind of, I felt God leading me away from missions, which really was confusing to me because I was like, that's like the
Mhm.
best thing I could be, right? Like what could you possibly have me do that was better than being a missionary?
Right.
And and more, I just felt led to write stories. And um, the cool thing is now is the type of stories that I write, the ones that I'm drawn to write, are stories of what God has done in His church throughout time, and so I kind of get to
Mhm.
do the same thing, but in a
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah. And so this is Daughter of the Rebellion is your third novel, but
Mhm.
as I was looking into the other two, all three of them seem to focus on the Roman Empire, right? That sort of
Yeah.
context. So what is it about that particular place and time in history that drew you in as a writer?
I didn't really see myself. I always enjoyed learning about this period in history, but I never saw myself writing in it. It felt really big and daunting. Um, So I was writing in other historical eras, and then trying to convince my husband one day that we should stop celebrating Valentine's Day because it's just dumb and commercialized. And so I started looking into like what is this even about, and stumbled over the story of Saint Valentine and the early church in Rome and kind of what was going on, and it just totally took hold of me. And I was looking for the novel, for the movie. Like felt like an epic story that somebody had to have told somewhere, and I couldn't find it. And it wouldn't let me go. And I started like visualizing scenes and conversations and started writing them down. And all of a sudden I had this novel set in ancient Rome. So
Okay, so which is it? Is that your first?
Of Love and Treason was my first. Yeah.
Okay,
I
okay.
St. Valentine. And then, yeah, once I found a publisher for that, it was just kind of like you kind of stay in your era for a while, at least, that you kind of debut in. So,
Yeah.
I
Well, and
mean,
there's so many stories you could tell from that era.
oh yeah, the early church is so fascinating to me. Church history is so fascinating, and it's full of adventure and just amazing stories of love and sacrifice. And those are the stories that get me super excited. So there's tons of story options within this point in history.
Yeah. Okay. Show us your new book. This episode releases May 21st. So Daughter of the Rebellion will have just come out.
Yes, May 12th.
Okay. Okay. So brand new, Daughter of the Rebellion. This is about a female Visigoth war daughter named Adelgard. Am I saying that right?
I don't know. I mean, I've said Adelgard, I've said Adelgard, I've said Adele, I've said Adele.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
okay.
Whatever you feel like she is.
We'll call her Adele, but a Visigoth war daughter who gets captured by the Romans and is turned into a female gladiator, aka gladiatrix, which is really fun to say. And things happen, and there's some romance, and there's a real life historical figure who enters the scene, and it's just so much fun. But okay, she is a Visigoth war daughter. Tell us about the Visigoths and their war daughters. Who are these people?
So not a ton is known. They were pushed off their land in the east, sort of, man, I'm trying to think of what country that is now, but they sought refuge from the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire allowed them to come in when the Huns were pushing them off of their lands. And they were settled in what is now Bulgaria. And the Romans allowed them in as long as the men would fight in their army, in the Roman army. So they kind of took all the men and put them in the front lines and were treated very horribly. So they, after such a long time, they kept appealing for citizenship. They're like, we're living in the Roman Empire. We're fighting in your military. We are living like Romans. Can we please just be citizens? And they were just ignored every single time until finally Alaric he was a general, and he rallied an army of Visigoth warriors and followers and started kind of pillaging the Roman countryside on their way to ask the emperor again if they could be citizens, which doesn't sound like a great plan. But I don't know, maybe it was a fear tactic. Yeah. But the Eastern Roman Empire ignored him, so he marched to the west to the 16-year-old emperor there, who was terrified when he found out this, army is coming. And he sent his general out, and they were defeated at Plentia. And so tons of Visigoths were taken captive at that time, including Alaric's wife and children. And so we know there's women in the camp. And there were some stories of like maybe they had women warriors and maybe not. So I was intrigued by that. So kind of latched onto that and ran with it. So then we know 4 years later, in 410, Alaric comes back and actually sacks Rome, and that's kind of the end of the Western Roman Empire. So, so this is kind of before that, but we have these group of captives now in Rome, and I'm imagining what happened to them. And so I've imagined many of them being sold to the gladiator schools to be trained for these big victory celebration that's upcoming. So that's kind of where we find Adele.
Okay. So this is, like you said, toward the end of at least you said the Western Roman Empire. I mean, is it toward the end of the whole thing? I'm not
The
keen.
Eastern Roman Empire lasted, oh, I mean, I'm going to be horrible on the dates, but it's like the 1200s or 1500s or something. Like it lasted. That Eastern side lasts a long time. So the Western side falls.
Gotcha.
By 486, it's gone.
Okay. So Adele is taken captive. I mean, she's been training, as you mentioned. She's been training to fight to try to defend their camp in case something happens, but she never really gets a chance. She's taken captive, and then she's really training to be a gladiator, and she kind of loves it because she, people are like screaming her name, and she's like a fan favorite.
Yeah.
She kind of ignores the fact that she's a slave.
Yeah.
But one thing that struck me in this book was I was expecting a lot more death and dying in the arena. Now, there is some without spoilers, but especially in the first half of the book, there's not as much. And I was like, oh, wait a second. So is that due to her being a female? Is that due to this point in time in the Roman Empire? What went into that?
So what I learned in my research was fascinating to me because I was thinking, gladiators, like the games, it's all just like the Gladiator movie, right? Everybody's just a bloodbath. Everybody's killing everybody. But these were more like elite sports teams, and they're very expensive to keep, very expensive to train. When you have good ones, you don't want another team killing your good ones. So they kind of, most of the time, were fighting to best the other fighter, not to kill them. So a lot of these matches were kind of like, I don't know, like wrestling or fight. Like, I don't know. They're not
like
killing each other.
A serious injury, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's possible you're going to get cut and infected and die later, but we're not, it's not murder most of the time. And then you would have these big events put on by the emperor, and then it would be fights to the death, and everybody would go crazy for those. So for a lot of this book, we're just showing these small, school rivalries where the fighters are fighting each other.
Yeah. So then most of again, in the first half of the book, leading up to the big victory games, when it is a death match and everybody's like, oh shoot, this is legit. Leading up to that, most of the action is Adele getting to know Felix, who's one of the medicus. I don't know what the plural of medicus is. He's a medicus for the gladiator school, so he's their like team doctor basically, and he's very conflicted about it. And the only reason he's working there is because his dad has disappeared and the family doesn't have anything, so he really needs to make some money. So there's this very cool interplay between these two characters. She's been taken from her father. His father has vanished. So they're both kind of these fatherless characters in this situation at this gladiator school. And then there's this other figure who's real. Y'all, please do not Google Telemachus until you finish the book. But he enters the scene and he's a friend of both of these characters. And wants to try to rescue the Visigoth captives. And it's just so much fun. It's so cool. But question for you, as you're writing this, which character was easiest to write and which character was hardest?
Oh, man. I think Telemachus might have been the toughest to write because, I mean, we don't know a lot we know what he did. We know his main spotlight moment. But then like his backstory, we don't know. And so it's trying to create a backstory to get us to that point, to where that point in the spotlight feels really believable and inevitable for him. So that was kind of a tough one. He went through some different iterations of who could he have been and what could his personality be, and what kind of person does it take to do the things he did. So that was a little tougher. I would say Adele's probably the funnest, easiest to write. She just kind of came into the story
Mhm.
with all of her personality and, sass. And she was a lot of fun. She made writing this book so fun because I never knew what kind of comeback she was going to have, what she was going to say. Um, wasn't sure for a long time if this was going to be a love story at all, but she came around.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's what makes it so fun is their banter and their dialogue back and
Mhm.
forth is absolutely chef's kiss. She's just so snarky. I love it.
Yeah, she was fun.
So, how did God show up in this book that surprised you? Because, I mean, it's Christian fiction. These characters are drawing closer to Christ throughout the story. The gospel is explicitly told, but like, were there things either in the story itself or just for you as a writer where you're like, that was a God moment that you weren't expecting?
I think so. I never put theme into stories, like intentionally thinking like, oh, this is the theme of the story. And so it's always fun for me to write the action of the story, the character arc of the story, and get to the end and be like, oh, that's what the story is about. Like I
Mhm.
wasn't expecting it to be a story, that was so full of the sanctity of life and how important like life is, and
Mhm.
how everyone is made in the image of God. Like, it's a gladiator story. It seems very violent where life is cheap. And so I don't know why I wasn't expecting that to be,
Mhm.
something that came through the story, but it was kind of fun to see. It's always kind of fun for me to see, okay, like what is the story here? I wrote
Mhm.
I wrote the thing, but what is God trying to do through the story? And so
Mhm.
that was fun for me.
Yeah.
Um, just more of a personal note, I think just that it is my third book. Every single book I've written has been such a different experience, on this side of the computer. So first one took 6 years. It was, just a fun project. I worked on it in my spare time. The second one was my first book I've had to write under a deadline. And that was really hard for me. So I was looking at this book and going, oh man, is this going to be like book two? Is this going to be so hard to write? And I was really scared going into it, honestly. And so I just prayed, like, Lord, just renew my joy for writing and like just make this fun. I know it's going to be work. I know I'm going to have to show up every day, but just if you could please renew my joy. And he did. Like, this was the funnest book I've ever written, which sounds probably weird because it's so violent. And, it's a book about gladiators and all that kind of stuff. But it was just, I couldn't wait to sit down every day and write this book. So
Mhm.
for me, God showed up every morning in just the joy and the fun of writing this one. So
That's
it's
so
it's
cool.
special in that way.
Yeah, that's so cool. As you were talking, I was like, okay, so is it still fun? Like, is it? And then you said that, so that's awesome. I know sometimes it can be once they start paying you to do something, sometimes that can suck the fun out of it. But I'm so glad that he renewed your joy in it.
He did,
Uh,
yes.
so your book is set in the Roman Empire. Um, and but there's a lot of universal themes, like, regardless of the setting, you have the prodigal daughter, kind of a prodigal
Mhm.
son, kind of a prodigal father, I don't know. um, Love and sacrifice, as you mentioned, universal themes throughout. So is there, for the people who like old books and new books, is there maybe a classic work of literature that you would recommend, like, hey, if you like my book or if you want more of any of this, that you would recommend for people to read?
I know, I was trying to think about that. Classic literature, probably like Ben-Hur is still
Mhm.
like Roman Empire. You've got chariot racing, this kind of thing. There's, themes of redemption and forgiveness and
Mhm.
all that going into it. So probably Ben-Hur.
Mhm. Yeah, and the movie is a classic. I've never seen it or read it, so I need to put those on my list.
Charlton Heston was my first like celebrity crush when I was 4 years
Ah!
old. Like Ten Commandments, every time I went to my grandma's house, I was like, please, can I watch the Ten Commandments? And she was like, sure. Like, and I sat there for 4 hours, I didn't move. So
Oh man, that's great. Yeah, my mentor, she really liked Yul Brynner in that movie. Of course, he plays the Pharaoh, so it's like, oh, but she, I don't know, she had a thing for Pharaoh. um, so, is there in your reading life, talk about the books that you loved growing up, Little House. Are there books just as an adult that have stuck with you that you kind of go back to over and over, or that have been your favorites?
I mean, this is like sort of a little bit opposite, maybe. I love The Hobbit. I've read it so many
Mhm.
times. I think personally, I probably am a little bit of a hobbit. Like, I just want to eat bread and run around outside barefoot,
Yeah.
and not be in danger, but just kind of like tell stories about it. Um,
Mhm.
so that one just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like I resonate with that a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Have you, this just came to me, have you gotten to go on a foreign mission trip, even though that's not your vocation? Have you been able to go?
yeah, I've been to several countries in South America, and I went to Russia, and yeah,
Yeah.
quite yeah. It was amazing. Is
Mhm.
definitely life changing. You feel like you're going there to like do some big thing, and you come back like that wasn't about me at all. That wasn't about like what I was. It was about what God was doing in my heart, and
Mhm.
yeah, they're so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. So you have been there and back again.
Yeah. Yes.
um, what are you reading now?
I'm currently reading Belle of Chatham by Laura France.
Uh-huh.
About halfway through, but I'm loving it. I love her story so much that the slow burn angst just it gets me every time. I love it.
And she's another Christian historical fiction. Is that
And
correct?
historical fiction in like the early colonial America. This one's set during the Revolutionary War. So
Okay. Very
yeah,
cool. Very cool. All right. So the book is out. Where can people buy it? Show us the cover again.
it is. It's so pretty.
Hmm.
It is available wherever you like to buy books. So your local bookstores can order it. You can order it online. It's on audio, ebook, all the versions. So
Okay. Very cool. And is there a Bible verse or passage that either applies to this particular book or your work in general that you'd like to end with?
yeah, this book opens with 2 Timothy 4:7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Um, I think that's just a good one for all of us to keep in mind and just fight toward and push for. And
Yeah,
all that.
that's so good. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was so much fun. Can't wait for your next book.
Thanks for having me. This has been so fun to chat with you and your listeners.
Yeah. And y'all, I have exciting news for this episode. Like the last one, we actually have a sponsor. So I want to thank them, Business Communications Inc. They are my personal IT people. They keep me connected and powered up so I can record and edit and produce this podcast. So very thankful for BCI. They're located here in Ridgeland, Mississippi, and you can find them at bcipeople.com. And if you enjoyed this episode of Oh My Word with Katie, please share it with your friends. Please give us both a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts so we can reach more people. And until next time, happy reading.